Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Bridget Bright, and I'm the Director of Communication and Membership for CASE, which is the Council of Administrators of Special Education. Today, we're presenting on how to support your teachers using technology, presented by Richard Capone of Let's Go Learn. Allow me to introduce our panelists for today. I've introduced myself and Richard waved. He is the founder and CEO of Let's Go Learn. Also joining us is Phyllis Wolfram, who is the executive director of CASE. Today's speakers. And one of the things we like to do for CASE is to give a brief update. We understand many of you joining us today are CASE members, and there's been a lot of exciting movement in the CASE organization. So an opportunity that just passed was the boot camp, the discipline boot camp that we hosted with Julie Weatherly. If you missed that, and man, was it quite the event. Phyllis was the co-host on that. There's an opportunity coming in June for our 504 second annual conference, also with Julie Weatherly. And that is going to be a very timely event as we're anticipating new proposed regulations for 504. Other events that you can find on the CASE website, which is casecec.org, is our virtual learning events. So we are offering a new directors network that will help with topical discussions each month. And then also, if you are a new member of CASE, we are beginning new membership Zooms that will occur the first Friday of each month. So lots of exciting things. Be sure to always check the CASE website for the most up-to-date information. And Phyllis, would you like to share some of the exciting things that are going on?
Absolutely. Thanks, Bridget. It's such a pleasure to be with everyone today. Thank you for joining us. We know Richard has some great resource to share with you today, but just to give you a little bit of information, those of you who are CASE members and those of you who might not yet be CASE members, you should be joining. But just to give you a brief update of some of the work that we're doing to support special ed leaders across the nation. This morning, we had the opportunity by invitation to meet with the Government Accountability Office, otherwise known as the GAO. Some of you may know their work, some of you may not, but they are charged by Congress to provide information when Congress has requests for specific information that they want more education on. So the GAO reaches out to associations and stakeholders, and we have a great working relationship with that office, with those individuals that do the work. And this morning we were on a call with several of our leaders, our local special ed administrators from across the country that are on the CASE Executive Committee. And here are the three questions they asked. How are students with disabilities and resources for educating them distributed across states and school districts? What are the key obstacles to educating K-12 students with disabilities, and what are the implications for their learning? The third one was, how are selected states and school districts addressing these resources, these resource-related obstacles, and what role can the federal government play in helping them? So we had some great dialogue around those three questions, and we will continue. The GAO then will issue a report, and their report for this particular information will come out in probably in March of 24 is what they shared with me at the conclusion of the call. But I just wanted you to know that we are connected. We're learning, continually having those conversations about what Congress is thinking, the work that the GAO is doing. We work with the Office of Special Education Programs, and in turn, we share that information with our partners like Let's Go Learn. So today, as you go through the webinar, Richard is going to share with you another great resource that will help you hopefully overcome some of those obstacles that you are facing, as well as provide you with a great resource. So Richard, I'm going to toss it to you, and thank you for giving Bridget and I an opportunity to share some CASE information. And we thank you for just being such a great partner with CASE, always being there side by side. It's fun to see you all at our events, of course, But we thank you for the learning journey that you take us on about all the cool things you're developing. So Richard, I'll toss it to you and I'll stop talking because you know I like to talk and I keep going on and on sometimes. So there you go.
No problem. I always love to hear from you. All right, thank you so much. So here's the agenda. We just got the case update. I'm going to quickly talk about who Let's Go Learn is, and then talk about some of the challenges facing special education today, and tying that to the technology and what we're doing at Let's Go Learn. And I will be doing a quick demo of the system, and then we'll go into a Q&A. So this is meant to be sort of a high level opportunity for you all to plan. What I like about working with CASE is that as a software developer, it's not just about producing software, it's about understanding what's happening at the high level, and then also understanding what's happening in the classrooms, and try to tying everything together, because our job is not just to produce software and tools, it's to make sure that it actually works and it's fully operational, right? So that's a really tough thing to do. Oops, wrong direction. So just quickly, I founded Let's Go Learn in 2000 with Dr. McCollum at UC Berkeley, and initially our goal was to launch an assessment that could answer why is a student struggling. And at the time, we really understood that students are not single scores. They're really they're organic, they're alive, right? So it's really artificial when you have these different types of tests out there. So we needed something that was better, and so that's what we set out to accomplish. Interestingly enough, our first assessment ran on a modem. It was a computer adaptive assessment over a 28.8 modem. And today, of course, that's not an issue anymore, but we've really been in this field for a long time. And now that we're really focused on special education, it's been great because special educators understand good data, they need good data, and that's what we're trying to do. Okay, so first of all, I just want to sort of mention some of the challenges that are happening, and you guys will know this, but I just want to bring them to the forefront because it'll frame what we're trying to do, right? So I would say one of the biggest challenges are teacher shortages. And because of the shortages, what happens is it requires faster onboarding. And a lot of times those new teachers who come into your districts, maybe they haven't had as many training, because sometimes I know there's a lot of emergency credentials happening as well. And so what we're trying to do is this is one of the challenges that we want to help address, all right? The other piece here is that a lot of assessments out there, unfortunately, are assessments that were adopted by the whole school district for general education, and then they're sort of pushed down into every single department, and that's a problem. So so we're talking about that. A lot of these assessments are really accountability assessments that are meant to say how is the student doing on the state test. Now there are there's diagnostic qualities, but it may not be at the quality that special education needs. So that's something we're trying to address as well. Next thing is IEP writing, right? This is very challenging. It requires expertise. When you have new teachers, it's very difficult. So how do you come up with a scalable process, a scalable way to help everyone, bring them along, and make sure you have good quality IEPs? And tied directly into that, of course, is goal writing, right? So if you don't have good data and you're just expected for the teachers to sort of come up with present levels, it really hampers the ability to write good goals for students. And so that's where we see our opportunities to help in the goal writing area as well. And then the next thing is I want to mention a big challenge, I think, is the lack of continuity between general ed, intervention, and special education. And this is something that technology can help, because nowadays it is possible to bring things together with good tools. And I'll be talking about how we help address that. Okay, so those are the challenges. I do want to just talk about some positive factors as well that I think are really going to help special education departments. And the reason why I sort of bring this up is, just so you know, a lot of times when we work with a district, we're helping them bring about new initiatives, or we're helping with existing initiatives, right? So I'd say one of the positive things is that there's so much cloud-based tools out there today that it really does make things easier. And so a lot of times when we're working with someone, we're talking about stuff like, hey, can we post stuff on your intranet? How can we help with video on-demand training, right? So there's one thing about doing training, but how do you also roll it out, drip it out into on-demand? And I think a lot of these, the great positive thing is that there's so many good tools out there in terms of intranets and stuff like that that really helps, okay? The other piece here is that technology is so much more advanced. I think it's good to remind people that it is really, really accelerating, and so we need to take advantage of it. So don't settle for the old technology. Now is a good time to say, hey, let's rethink what we're doing. How can we introduce technology to help with this problem? The other piece here also is I think it's a lot of times people underestimate teachers and say, well, my teachers are way too overwhelmed. Well, here's the thing is nowadays, a lot of the technology that we're asking teachers to use in the classroom, it's something they use in their everyday lives. And so it is easier and faster to adopt new tools. So if you're already using some kind of online assessment or some kind of online instruction, adopting and switching over to a new one, it's not that hard. And sometimes it's good just to go ahead and do it, because waiting just means you're stuck in the old ways, okay? All right, so that's a little bit about the background. So let me just tie this now when I'm talking about all these issues, positive factors, and challenges. It's tied to Let's Go Learn. So what are we? So we provide a data-driven personalized learning system, right? So obviously teachers do this, but we're providing a system that helps in this process. So first of all, at the highest level, we provide diagnostic assessment in math and reading. Our assessments are all fully adaptive. That means the reading assessment is K-12, the math assessment is K-7, K-8, and then up to algebra. And so regardless of the student, we're going to fully adapt and find out where they're at. So this is highly granular diagnostic assessment. This data goes into our engine, which then creates a personalized learning path for every single student. So you have gap-focused automatic instruction for students in math and ELA. And then you also have these tools that produce reporting. So whether it's reporting for a teacher in a regular classroom, or whether it's someone who needs to write an IEP or set goals, whether you need to use it for daily flexible grouping, this data does it all. Okay, so that's at the heart of what we have. Now, on top of that is a couple years ago, we added the formative assessments. And our formative assessments are fully integrated into our assessments, meaning if you do any quiz, the data lays directly on top of the diagnostic data. So this is really quite unique, and I'll show this to you in a second so you can see what I'm talking about. But we're really one of the first systems that integrates diagnostic assessment, progress monitoring, SDI, all into a single package, okay? One thing that's important, I talked before about the continuity between general education, intervention, and special education. The same assessment that we have is used in general ed, it's used in intervention, and it's used in special education. So the great thing is you can have the same online assessment used by everyone, but the difference is people use different reports. The general ed teacher may only use a summary report, which is a one-page report, or maybe they use the parent report. The interventionists are going to use the prescriptive reports, and then of course the special educators will be using the IEP tool, which helps write their IEP and help set goals. So the great thing is, whether you're rolling out, initially in special education, your department, you could eventually push it down to intervention and then even in general education. And a lot of times we see this happening just because you guys understand the need for a powerful diagnostic, where I would argue that when general education is selecting assessment, they don't select a test that's going to be really good for special education, right? But detailed data can always be summarized for general education. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so how does our technology support you? So this is the way it would be implemented. Initially, you do that diagnostic assessment, and you use that data in a special education setting to help write the PLAFs. You identify all your present levels. You get some narrative text as well. And then from that, you use certain reports to help start setting goals. And this is one of those things where, even Phyllis was talking about, what are you doing about it, right? How are you improving these things? This is really a key area here, because you could write those short-term objectives. And this is really, really helpful for new teachers. So what we do usually is new teachers or teachers with high caseloads, we'd have a separate training for them. So that way we really walk them through exactly, okay, you've done the assessments. Now, how do you use this to write your IEPs? How do you use this to write goals? And so we really step them each way, step them through each way. The next thing would be, once you have this, is it would automatically create your SDI. So you could assign students an automatic course that would work on their gaps, or the teacher could also go ahead and assign lessons as well. So you're in full control. As a teacher, you may say, look, I need to work on phonics, on short vowel, long vowel. You can assign those lessons. You can assign any lesson you want. And so you have full control. Now, the great thing is, if in your workflow, you also want to measure progress from either legal compliance or just to know if it's working, the teacher can assign any quiz that's pre-made. So we're not giving teachers an item bank. We're saying, look, you just worked with a student for a long time. Here's a quiz on short vowel. Queue it up and test them. Here's a quiz on 3-digit by 2-digit multiplication. Queue it up. Once the teacher queues up that test, if the student passes it, that data lays on top of your baseline data. It regenerates your subtest scores like phonics or multiplication, and then it regenerates your total score. So you have one-click progress monitoring because it's constantly updating your summative data as well as your granular subtest data. So from a progress monitoring standpoint, the teacher doesn't have to think about it. It's just automatic. Queue up a test, and you have a baseline correlated to your progress monitoring. Okay, so how do we do this? This is the reason why we're able to do it, and I like pointing this out because I always say when you're gonna choose to use a new tool, a lot of times you choose the tool based on the specifications. We're a diagnostic assessment, and what that means is, and this is math, we break math up into the individual subtests. So there's place value, addition of whole numbers, subtraction of whole numbers, multiplication of whole numbers, division, fractions. This goes all the way out to 44 subtests. Each one of these is a stacked scope and sequence of skills. So if we test somebody in an area, if they don't have mastery, we go down to a lower skill. If they don't have mastery, we go down to a lower skill. We go until we have mastery sandwiched against a non-mastery, right? And that's your ceiling condition. So this is your present levels, and one step above that is your instructional skills that you work on. So this is the model that we operate under. A standards model just says you're a 4th grader, so I'm going to test you in a bunch of items in maybe grade 3.5 all the way up to 4, and it just takes a cross section and only tests you in those areas, but you don't really know exactly where your present levels are, nor do you know exactly where your instructional points. So that's the difference. So if we look at this place value, this one little subtest here, this is how it drills down. We know place value is tens and ones, hundreds, thousands, expanded forms, millions, decimal place value. This student is right here. This is their present level, and this is the next goal they should be working on. That's what we do on every single subtest, right? So that is fundamentally different from most assessments out there. I would argue most assessments, they're chasing the larger accountability market, and that's not what we're doing. We're chasing the special education diagnostic market. In reading, very similar, it's just that reading has less subtests. You've got about 6/7 subtests, and again, we go up and down regardless of the student's grade to find this. Okay, so that is in a nutshell how it works. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and jump into a demo now, but this is just sort of a recap. You know, we're trying to do all these different things, and this is why we really excel in special education. Couple additional highlights is we're making compliance automatic, right? Because that's the last thing a teacher wants to worry about when they're a new teacher is they're trying to help the student. But for them to have to remember, oh, you know, am I actually progress monitoring properly? Are my scores comparing to the baselines? You know, am I writing goals that are really tied to the present levels? By having a system that does all this together, we make it automatic. Okay, so, oh, actually, I'm sorry. Let me show you one more thing before I jump into the demo. I want to talk about the SDI, and I forgot. So the SDI is our instruction, right? And the real key here is what's really important in instruction is instruction needs to tie together. It needs to influence these factors: engagement, motivation, and cognitive load. And together, if your instruction has all 3 of these, it optimizes learning. And so what that means for us is that our assessments give you a direct path to exactly where do you need to teach a student. And what that does is it reduces the cognitive load on the student. When you have lessons that are culturally relevant, it improves motivation, engagement. Music is great. All of our lessons have music so that it reduces cognitive load, improves motivation, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to necessarily go through all of these because we're in a little bit of a hurry. I just want to give you an idea. The last one I want to point out is just gamification. You know, we do have games. At the end of each lesson, they get explicit instruction and they get lessons and they get to earn badges. And when they have something incorrect, it gives them, explains why it was wrong, and then allows them to move forward. So all of this is really our approach to accelerated learning, and this is really important from the standpoint of a student with IEPs. You need this extra support. Okay, so right now I am in a class, and what I want to show you is if I were to sort of go to, let's take a look at a student with some reading scores. So here's my class. They've all taken the reading assessment called Dora. We see their scores right here. right here, it's grade level scores, high frequency words, word rec, phonics. If I wanted to sort of sort my class, I could say, let me take a look at my class by the phonics scores, and we see all those scores right here, sort of organized from high to low. If I want to see my class right here, here's all my students, and I can see exactly where they're at in the scope and sequence of phonics. These students have mastered phonics. These students are working on beginning sounds. These students here are working on multi-syllable words. So if I wanted to do small group instruction, I can assign an assignment to them. Or, of course, our system allows them to have automatic lessons automatically assigned to them at the right levels as well. But I just want to just quickly show you the ease of this. Once you're done with testing, you have all this data at your fingertips. If I wanted to write an IEP for a student, I could go ahead and go over, say, special education tool, and I want to go ahead and take a look and say I want to take a look at phonics for this student. So right here allows me initially to see what is our present level. The present level of this student within phonics is vowel digraphs. So they can read some words with vowel digraphs. I can now go ahead and toggle it and take a look at the skills that we need to work on next. And here it is. The next thing we need to do is make sure Helene can know all words with vowel digraphs, and then we need to work on the R-controlled vowels. So these are my goals, right? I apologize, I know this is a little tiny, but this is the ease. I'm going through this really fast, but obviously teachers would be trained on how to do this. This is a narrative paragraph that was written specifically for the student that talks about how they're approaching reading overall when you consider vocabulary, decoding, and comprehension, right? So that's generated for each student based on their unique data. If we go ahead and take a look at math, it's even a lot more complicated. So let's say we wanted to look at Rianne. So again, here's all my summative scores, but if I want to really dive down into it. So in this particular student, what I would do is initially I might say, okay, I'm looking at all their strand scores. I think what I want to do is focus on numbers and operations because that's an area that's a little bit lower and we know that's really important. So we're going to focus on that. So I click numbers and operations. And again, this is my present levels. So I can see what they can do, and I could use this in my initial narrative. If I want to now say to work on the skills that I want to focus on, I can come over here and I can look and see exactly where I need to focus, right? So this student here, the lowest scores are the lowest skills. So this is kindergarten skill, a first grade skill, a second grade skill. So I need to work on for this student. And then I probably want to maybe jump into some division and some fractions. At a glance, I need to work on for this student, right? So this is the power of integrating a diagnostic assessment and using it in a special education setting. We've come up a lot of these reports by working with teachers, right? So this is how we came up with this, is working with teachers saying, hey, what do you need in order to help you write your reports, in order to help you set goals? And so again, our training would teach teachers how to do this very easily. I want to just do one more thing, and then we're gonna just open up some questions, okay? The next thing is just to show you instruction. When you come over to instruction, I can go ahead and, let's see here, if I take a look at right here. So if I come up and look at this here, just to show you, this shows you exactly what the student is getting. So this student is getting a kindergarten lesson right here. Then they're getting 3 first grade lessons, and then a handful, 6, 7, 8 second grade lessons, and so on and so forth. So these are the lessons that are created for each student automatically. And we do have a question: are the goals aligned? Let me see. Are the goals aligned with IEP Direct? So the goals we're showing you are basically based on the specific skill. So it's a criterion reference assessment, right? But we break the standards apart. So it can be standards-based in the sense that when you go over to your reports and you look at one of these things, you can see the standards. Let me just show this to you real quickly. Okay, so if I go ahead and select this, we do see, so this particular student here, they're in 4th grade, so this is the 4th grade standard they're supposed to be working towards, but this is the 1st grade skill they need to work on, and this is the 1st grade standard that applies to it. So Bertha will identify the corresponding cardinal number. So cardinal number identification is under this standard, but of course, maybe by 4th grade, you're not really teaching that, so this is what they're working towards, which is sort of a higher standard. So that's, if you do need to have standards numbers, that works. But a lot of times, you're more concerned about what is the skill I'm teaching, but you have both. Okay. So that is it, sort of in a nutshell. Let's go ahead and open up to some other questions as well, or Phyllis or Bridget, if you guys have any questions as well or interjections, feel free to chime in. And Alyssa, do we have more questions from the group?
No, that was just the one right now.
Okay.
So I have one, Richard.
Sure.
So one of the things we know about what's happening across the nation in our special education classrooms is the number of new staff, and in some cases, substitute teachers. So when we talk about ease of use and training for teachers, maybe just briefly, what does that look like? Or because what I see in this program is that I love that it drills down to specific skills and helps create a present level of performance, when that sometimes is the hardest part for teachers to generate, and especially if they're new or a substitute and not understanding all the standards that we're responsible for. So I guess maybe just kind of talk about what a great benefit that piece is, and maybe the ease of use.
Sure. I mean, that's something we always get complimented is our customer service and the ease of use of the system. And initially, we just teach teachers, how do you assess the students, right? Once they have the assessment, then the next thing is, okay, what do you need to do? And they may say, well, the next step is to maybe set goals. So what we do is I need to look at the data, and we break training into these bite-sized pieces. So it might be the first training is an hour for all teachers on how to queue up assessments. The next thing maybe the next training might be how do I use reports and write goals. And so we would show them essentially what I just did, but it's all right there, and we break it up for each step of the way for the teachers. And then we also have all of the stuff here on the home tab. So we have all the professional development, on-demand courses, video libraries, so they can literally just say, how do I write an IP? How do I queue up a test? How do I set goals? And so we have special videos that show you how to do all that. And a lot of them could be like 10 minutes or 5 minutes long. So the goal is to break everything up into operational pieces for the teachers, because in the end of the day, you're in a hurry and you're like, hey, how do I do this? And that's what we want to do, make it easy for them. Just to sort of, I'll show you something else that's really cool. If I'm working with a student and I say, okay, I was working with Bertha and I need to, we worked on phonics for a long time, and I just want to go ahead and queue up a quiz, I can come down here and say, let's type in short vowel. I queue that up. She gets the quiz, she passes it, and then next time I come back over here, I could go ahead and look at some let's see here, some graphs, and I could say, well, let's go ahead and graph and take a look at how she's doing in phonics, and then it would show you your pre-post. Literally, I give a quiz, and now I have automatic pre-post progress monitoring.
And I think that is, I mean, this is the time of year when a number of teachers in some districts doing IEPs, right? We're closing out this year. We're looking at progress for the year or for the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter of school. We're getting ready to, in some cases, pass on information to a new teacher, especially for transitioning from grade to grade, depending on how the structure is in the school. I just see a graph, especially like this, is so easy to explain for parents, and sometimes easier to understand and look and see progress, not just hear it, but to really see the progress that students are making, or sometimes to show us that maybe the progress is not there, and then what do we need to do to shift and change our instruction to make that happen? And when you were talking earlier about zone of proximal development, you know, that just really hits home with me. Are we teaching the right thing at the right time? And this really provides that avenue by which to help teachers.
Yeah, for sure. And then, you know, the other great thing about this too, I just want to point out, because you're talking about sharing data amongst teachers, the data stays year over year. You know, we have some students who have been in our system for 13 years or 12 years because it's a vertically aligned data set. So if you take it when you're in first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, it's all comparable. We're not a test where we're only giving you fourth grade items. It's adaptive test, so you can always move up and down the continuum. So this student here, this is real data, by the way. It's just that we changed all the names for the demo server. So this student here, it looks like, you know, at this point here, they suddenly jumped up and maxed out and understood phonics. They went from beginning sounds in 1 year to suddenly maxing it out. And then, you know, slowly they're trying to work up their comprehension. Looks like they might have had, you know, didn't do as well in the last test. But anyway, the idea here is you've got all that available to you. One other question we got is that, do you have accommodations and can you maintain validity with some of the accommodations? And so, yes, I mean, accommodations are complicated, but there are some different things we do built in, like in math, we always use audio support. That's just because we don't want to bias a test. But there are other ways that you could apply accommodations, but some of those you just have to talk to our team about whether the measure is still going to be valid, because obviously if you change the measure enough, sometimes it could invalidate it, but that's just sort of a test thing. Okay, I think we're out of time, but thank you so much for hosting this with us, Phyllis and Bridget, and we're real excited to be talking to all these case people. So reach out if you have questions. I know we're happy to work with you, and because this is really a difficult time, and we want to make sure that we partner and make supporting your teachers a success. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.